Attention! Action!
In 1980, Saddam Hussein went into the movie business, bankrolling this lavish-looking multi-million-pound blockbuster. The film brought together the infamous dictator with hell-raising actor Oliver Reed.
You once drank 104 pints in 24 hours. That was beer, I presume.
No, it was 48 hours.
Ah, well, that's all right.
Yes.
Saddam's vision for this movie was a film that would tell the world his epic version of the birth of Iraq.
The director, Mohammed, was making the biggest picture the country's ever made.
Saddam Hussein was watching me.
But when filming began, so too did the Iran-Iraq war, and the British cast and crew had nowhere to hide.
An Iraqi commander had trained the guns down onto us and was going to blow us to Kingdom Come.
There was clearly no planning, no scheduling. It was total chaos.
The truth of the matter was, we were basically fucked.
The result was Oliver Reed, waging his own war on Baghdad's bartenders.
Oliver Reed was a weapon of mass destruction.
With the fall of Iraq, Saddam's movie disappeared from trace. Until now, when it resurfaced in a garage in Surrey. By opening these lost cans, we can piece together the story of one of the most bizarre feature films ever made, when an Iraqi tyrant and a British hellraiser locked horns in the desert.
It's only when you add up all those things, Iraq, Saddam Hussein, Oliver Reed, war zone, it's bonkers. The whole thing is madness.
Saddam Hussein swept to power in 1979. The Iraqi economy was booming, and Saddam wanted to be the major player in the Middle East. To stir up a feeling of nationhood, he ordered a movie charting the rise of Iraq in the 1920s, freeing itself from British colonial control. But Iraq had no experience of making movies. So Saddam turned to a London-based producer and a documentary director from Baghdad.
Well, the ambition was to make a film just like any other major blockbuster made in the west coast of America or in London or anywhere else. The early 80s would be the $20 to $30 million budget. And, Saddam Hussein said, okay, fine, yeah, carry on, whatever it takes, But don't let me down. Make a good movie.
Saddam Hussein was watching me. I know he was watching me. I was afraid.
And remember, in Iraq then, it is fatal in a way. If you incur the displeasure of those at the highest level, like Saddam Hussein and ministers and so on, you are in trouble.
From their production office near London, Latif and Mohammed began work on Saddam's movie. Helen Ryan was cast as the female lead, the colonial administrator, Gertrude Bell.
Well, I thought it was amazing. She was a double first at Oxford. She was an extraordinary woman, fluent Arabic speaker. It was incredibly exciting.
If you're not working as an actor and someone says, listen, would you like to come to Iraq, do a film? Why not?
Yeah, it was good, right? I think it was about £1,000 a week. which wasn't bad in 1981. Everything would be paid for there, that was good, and we'd be well looked after.
With a budget said to be on a par with Return of the Jedi, Latif was digging deep into Saddam's pocket.
Everything was moving in the right direction. Everything was running fine. And suddenly, a war started.
In September 1980, Iraqi forces invaded Iran. Saddam had seized an opportunity to outmuscle his neighbor.
Just imagine, we had to stop everything and see what's going on. After a little while, when the situation became obvious that this is going to go on and on and on, they said to us, okay, there's a war, it's on the border, mainly in Iranian territory, let's carry on, as per normal.
Despite Latif's concerns, pre-production rolled on. He'd hired over 100 experienced British cast and crew to work alongside Iraqis on location.
I wasn't worried about going into a war zone. I didn't think of it as going into a war zone. It was an adventure, really. You know, somewhere in some remote region of that country, there was fighting going on.
It was all very much sort of, oh, there's a war going on, but we won't worry about that. I thought that is one of the most exciting things I've ever been asked to do.
But Latif still had to cast the starring role. The British officer whose murder sparked a bloody uprising that led to independence, Colonel Leachman.
Ken, give me some jump music and I'll see you on this thing.
For this, he needed a major name and took a risk on the hellraiser of British cinema, Oliver Reed. By the 80s, Ollie's career was faltering, and he was making more headlines for his drunken antics than his acting.
He looked right. He looked a bully because the part of Colonel Leachman was of a bully who went around knocking heads and being very obnoxious to frighten people. Edward Fox was in line for it, but I think Oliver Reed was good for the part.
In April 1981, with Ollie Reed on board, the principal cast were ready to leave for Baghdad.
My memory of meeting Ollie at the airport was just what an extraordinary character he was. He had a huge Stetson hat on and a safari jacket. He just looked as though he was going out into the jungle. I knew a bit about his reputation as being a hard drinker. And I thought, this is going to be an adventure and a half.
You do it again, Oliver.
At Heathrow, the press swarmed to snap Ollie. He was leaving for Iraq with his new girlfriend, 17-year-old schoolgirl Josephine Birch. Josephine's mother had baked a Dundee cake to say goodbye.
Josephine came in with her mother. She was quite shy. I can't remember, was she 17?
I had been studying for my A-levels, doing English and sociology, I think, and history. So I was laden down with Canterbury Tales and God knows what, going to Baghdad.
You know, most of us were in economy. After we'd been in the air a while, word came down that Oliver was inviting us all up into first class.
I've never flown first class in my life until then. We're all in there, having a great time.
So we all had lots to drink, I suppose, and we continued having lots to drink. It was a long flight. And we sang songs at the tops of our voices.
as we neared Baghdad, they made us close all the curtains. And I said, why? And they said, oh, no, it's night time.
I put my shade back up, and they'd come rushing over and pull it back down. And I said, no, it's okay. I'd like to look out. They said, no.
And I think someone, maybe one of the actors, drew attention to the fact that sort of, look, over there's a fighter flying along beside us. And then we weren't told, but we just realized, of course, we are in a war zone, we've got protection.
And suddenly, the kind of reality of what we were going into became a bit more serious. Well, when we arrived in Baghdad at the airport, the place was teeming in soldiers and kind of obviously security people, etc. And we were, as a group, fast-tracked straight out into government limousines.
Everywhere was dark. There were no lights, and the cars all had very, very dipped headlights until we got near to our hotel, the Al Mansour Melia Hotel.
That the Iraqi troops are still besieging and in complete command of the Iranian terrorists.
You get in your room, you turn the television on, and all one saw on the television was the war.
Who's been shot down, who's been captured. The whole night was just the Iran-Iraq war.
I got to a real sort of point where I thought, you know, what have I got myself into? Why? What am I doing here?
In 1981, a troupe of British actors had arrived in Baghdad to make Saddam Hussein's big-budget movie about Iraqi independence. And Saddam was keeping a close eye on his guests.
Everywhere you looked had a smiling picture of Saddam Hussein in the window. Every single one, extremely intimidating, and you were very aware who was in control of the country.
Filming for Saddam's movie began at the end of April. Among his lost film cans, Latif has found behind-the-scenes footage that hints of the troubles ahead. On Saddam's orders, the all-British crew had been assigned Iraqi technicians and supporting cast. But within days, they were disappearing.
They would be working today, and everything packs up. Next morning, the guy comes from his hotel, driven to the location, and he looks around and nobody around. And he says, where is my crew? Oh, I'm very sorry, but they've been called up. So they disappeared to the front.
We would start a sequence with an Iraqi actor, and come the second day or the third day, he suddenly didn't appear. He's been called up, he's at the front. And then maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, we'd get a message back that this poor actor who had now been killed. So now we're going to have to reshoot that sequence again with another actor. Poor Mohammed, I mean, he was tearing his hair out. Bloody war. Taban, of course.
They go to war because they have to.
The war was causing huge delays, but orders came down from above to carry on at all costs.
I'd never seen a script of the film. I hadn't seen even any pages of, you know, you're going to be in this scene and that scene with whatever dialogue. Hadn't seen anything.
There seemed to be no structure. And you'd go on and you think, right, what am I doing?
On very, very hot days, we couldn't physically do it. The cameras would stop because you have a metal gate and the film would actually melt inside the gate.
Mohammed was very serious, very earnest, but he was under a huge amount of pressure. He was a documentary film director.
Ollie would say, aren't you going to do the reverses on this scene? You know, who are we talking to? I began to realise that Ollie knew a great deal more, I'm afraid, than the director.
To add to Mohammed's mounting problems, the film had complicated battle scenes to choreograph. To help him, Latif had hired one of Hollywood's top stuntmen.
So I'd done Indiana Jones and done Bridge Too Far and Superman. I think I was prepping probably Temple of Doom at the time. My briefing was to get a sort of army together of horses and stuntmen and prepare for this big battle sequence. My main concern was, after about 2 months, I hadn't seen a set, hadn't seen anything, and I said, well, where are the horses? And they kept saying, go and play tennis. I said, it's too hot to play tennis. No, I want to work, I want to do something. It was total chaos. You know, there was clearly no script, no planning, no scheduling.
You design a scene with lots of horses charging around. And next day, these horses don't turn up because the army is using them somewhere else. Through a situation beyond your control.
Saddam's war wasn't going to plan. The strength of the Iranian forces had surprised him. At the time, the British government saw Saddam as an ally, but amid rumours of torture and executions under his regime, a team of British journalists set out to find out more about the dictator.
We put in an invitation to Saddam Hussein to be interviewed by Panorama. We knew, I think, very little about what was going on at the time, and the only way to find out was to go there and see what we could do. So if we did actually get this interview we'd been promised, we would be the first Western television journalists ever to talk to Saddam.
Saddam Hussein wants to make the once romantic city of Baghdad again the powerhouse of Arab ambition.
While we were waiting for this interview, people were always pretty suspicious of us. I think a lot of local reputations would no doubt have depended on whether it all worked out in a way that Saddam liked.
While the reporters waited for their scoop, Saddam was keeping a closer eye on his movie set.
We were driving back one day from filming, and suddenly there was a commotion of people shouting in the streets, and their past going in the opposite direction, a large car, all the windows down, all soldiers with guns pointing out of the windows at everything and everybody, including us, and there in the back was Saddam Hussein. And a shiver went through me. It was a frightening presence.
We were all very much aware that there was this Saddam Hussein in the background, obviously watching.
Toward the guards, toward us. Back to position.
As Saddam looked on, behind the scenes, the pressure was building. 2 months into filming, and production had slipped worryingly behind schedule. For days on end, the British camp found itself with nothing to do, and the star of the movie got restless.
Oliver Reed and boredom is not a good mix. Oliver managed somehow to be poolside at about 8 in the morning with an enormous bowl of sangria.
Then by 10 o'clock the daiquiris would be coming out. By 12 o'clock we'd be getting into the champagne or whatever.
For Ollie, it was a chance for him to drink as much as he could possibly drink.
While Oliver led the charge by the pool, his girlfriend, Josephine, was concentrating on her schoolwork.
I would have been upstairs in the hotel room doing Canterbury Tales and sociology, so I'd be writing my essays on a beautiful sunny day. So I'd be sitting up there doing my homework.
Josephine, honestly, we hardly saw her. It was evident that Oliver was old enough to be her father. In fact, she would be his youngest daughter.
She was at school. She was doing her A-levels, or O-levels, A-levels.
Certainly in the beginning we caused quite a stir because of the whole age gap and Oliver's reputation.
He was besotted with her, loved her, but he did keep her hidden.
The other two take back. Take the barn doors off. What's that?
Despite the delays, the Brits soldiered on, and slowly the principal scenes of Saddam's movie were completed.
Filming with Oliver was absolutely charming and delightful and magical. He gave so much without doing huge amounts. It was with his face. Listening, he had a wonderful listening quality. I just wished there had been more scenes with him.
Here, in the major scene they played together, Oliver Reed shows every bit of that on-screen charm.
I think I'm getting a bit old.
You're getting very drunk, that's for sure.
Completed shoot days that could be chalked off the list were a cause for celebration. And Ollie played master of ceremonies.
You'd hear the magic words at the end of the day. Lads, back to my room for a soiree.
I was in my room, in bed, about 10 o'clock at night. Second minute, the whole door frame has come in, and there's Oliver standing there. Roger, you're drinking tonight.
Ollie's now got this champagne bucket. He's thrown the ice out. He then does this bottle of champagne in it. He gets a bottle of Remy Martin, pours it in, tops it up. He picks this champagne bucket up and goes... And we're all looking, thinking, you know, he just says, get it down, you lads.
He was on the top floor. Reg had him by the neck, hanging out over his balcony, and Ollie was screaming at him, go on, Reg, have you got the fucking nerve to go on, drop me, go on, drop me. It was about 20 floors up. I mean, he was dead. If he'd gone, he was dead.
I think Ollie did like a bit of danger. He could be very kind, but there was this other side.
He was a complete Jekyll and Hyde. He could turn from being totally charming to suddenly turning really nasty.
He smashed up, well, I was there for one, he smashed up one restaurant in the hotel and then wasn't allowed in any of the restaurants, and there were about 3, I think.
If the hors d'oeuvres didn't arrive fast enough, Oliver would shout for the manager, and when the manager came, he would get him by the scruff of the neck and lift him up into the air and throw him across the room.
Eventually, Reed's debauchery reached a new low, even by his own less than perfect standards.
Ollie was at the restaurant. He produces an empty bottle of wine and he fills it up with his bodily fluid. Calls the waiter and asks him to take this bottle of good wine into the next table with my compliment. The result of such behavior went right up to the highest authority. Felt was unacceptable. My client started screaming at me, "You must change this guy. Get him out of here. Bring somebody else."
So you were asked to get rid of Oliver Reed?
Absolutely. You couldn't do it. You couldn't do it in any situation. We were over time, over budget, over everything. How do you change your major star in the middle of a picture, for God's sake? It's just not done.
In Iraq, Oliver Reed's hell-raising had brought the film's production to a grinding halt. But Latif was desperate not to lose his star.
The guy would be drunk the night before, very obnoxious, lots of fight, lots of problems. 6 o'clock in the morning, he's sober, he knows his lines, he's on set on time, doing his job perfectly. Now you can't argue with this. As far as I am concerned, that's what I want.
Saddam Hussein's officials backed down, and Ollie was given one last chance to curb his destructive behaviour. For now, Saddam had more pressing matters to deal with. The Iran-Iraq war had escalated with constant shelling, and even Baghdad was under threat from airstrikes.
I got very fearful. I really didn't like it. I was trapped. How do I get out of here when there's an Iranian jet lining up to drop bombs? I got to the stage where I wanted out so much that I had my essentials in a bag to go.
With cast members going stir-crazy trapped in Baghdad, Mark Penfold decided to sneak out of the city.
The particular place I wanted to go to was Kerbala. The huge religious centre has a fantastic mosque. We were told, no, you can't go there. Well, I got a bit bolshy about that and thought, well, I want to go and see it anyway. And sure enough, I mean, there is this stunning, stunning mosque. So I went in and sort of stayed around the edges, as it were, so as not to be too conspicuous. And there were processions with coffins being carried into the mosque all the time I was there, which was probably an hour. Clearly the funerals were of soldiers killed in the war. And there was us, you know, living in this luxurious hotel and doing this filming and play acting, whereas the rest of the country was in a horrendous situation.
The war with Iran was taking a terrible toll. Yet Saddam demanded his feature film be made, whatever the cost. After weeks of waiting by the pool, head stuntman Vic Armstrong still hadn't seen a horse.
You're supposedly doing the battles in 4 or 5 weeks' time. I need to get the horses, I need to find the stuntmen. And they kept saying they're all in Habanya, they're outside of Baghdad. I said, well, let me go and see them. Well, they're working. I said, well, I'll see them when they stop working. I'll meet them in the evening. I need to look at the horses. I need to see what they can do. So they sent us off to Habanya. And we got there, and all there was a lot of horse droppings on the ground and some hay and straw scattered about. I said, well, where are they all?
The whole thing fell apart. We were just, you know, there in limbo waiting for orders. We were lost in Iraq, really.
When the Brits had arrived in Baghdad, their passports had been held by the Iraqi government. They needed an exit visa to leave, which had been promised only when contracts were complete.
It was a cocktail of not good stuff. Plus, I didn't know when I could get out of there. The truth of the matter was, we were basically fucked.
After 4 months of waiting in a war zone, Vic Armstrong decided enough was enough.
I said, look, guys, I've got to go. And they kept saying, no, just 2 more weeks, and then you have the horses, and you know, we start shooting in your sequence in 2 weeks, and you have the horses tomorrow, the next day, or whatever. And I said, look, if I say to everybody they're being held here and we can't leave at all, no matter what, if there's an emergency at home, you can't leave because you have no exit visa, you know, I think everybody's going to down tools. And they went, OK, we'll give you an exit visa.
With no flights out of Baghdad, Vic stepped back into Indiana Jones' role and planned an impromptu escape.
We walked past a cab rank and I said to the taxi driver, how much to go to Kuwait from Baghdad? And he told us like $200 or something. And he said, we have to leave at midnight. So by the time we go by Basra, the sun will be up. Otherwise, we go in the night, they see our headlights and the Iranian shooters. So, oh, that makes sense. And sure enough, the guy turned up at midnight and we jumped in the car and Roy sat in the front seat and I lay on the back seat. And I remember driving down there thinking, I shouldn't have my head laying this way because we hit anything, my head's facing out, I should put my feet that way. A long, long time, it seemed forever, 6, 7 hours. And then we got to the border, we got out, we got our suitcases, give them our passports and our exit visas, so we think, and the guy takes it and looks at it. And it was just like Midnight Express, the guy looks at it, looks at me, looks at Roy, and oh God, our heart's going now, and we both look at this bit of paper and they're looking at us and our passports and looking at the paper, and in the end they go, okay, go. It's, oh God. And we walked through the border and there's a cab rank the other side, jumped in the cab and said, take us to the airport, and we got on the first flight out and flew home.
While Vic had fled from Iraq, after weeks in Baghdad, the Panorama team were at last uncovering the truth about those who dared to cross Saddam.
Hoisted into the air at the end of a rope, Rafiq had his legs beaten.
But Saddam still hadn't agreed to an interview.
Eventually, we started packing our suitcases, saying we can't stay any longer. And then things did begin to happen. We realized that we were going to get this interview, and suddenly we were into the black car and we were heading for one of the palaces. We were taken in, we set our lights and things. Nobody knew what to do or what to say or where we could go or where he was going to be. He did appear, he had 2 or 3 people with him.
Now, finally, they had to confront Saddam and ask about reports of his brutality.
We are shocked at what is often reported in the West about the way you treat your political opponents. What is your reaction to that?
I wish to say something. The opposition in our country, it was no longer a local opposition, but an international opposition.
Should it be subject to torture and execution?
Yes. It calls for it to be subject to execution and to torture. In accordance with the law, we say he who collaborates with a foreign party is sentenced to death.
He was not bashful, he was very firm, absolutely clear. I felt that if we had been in the Gulf states, let's say in Saudi Arabia, there would have been a smile and a bland reply. We don't do that. Saddam was not like that. He was quite happy to be seen as a smiling dictator. He just was a very confident man who you would not want to tangle with under any circumstances.
While Saddam showed his true face to the world, his pet movie project was gearing up for an explosive finish. There was the epic final action scene of the movie to shoot, an attack on a train with huge explosions, hundreds of extras, and horses that had finally shown up.
Luckily, we found a disused track. The only problem is very close to the Iranian border.
And of course, even if you're in Hollywood, shooting a train crash is a very, very complicated business.
The director said, Robert, you will begin this sequence.
Better get used to it, Doctor. We are going to be here for a long time to come.
You will hear action. Then in front of you, there'll be a puff of smoke. then you begin to get up, you're dazed, and you see the Iraqi insurgents en masse charging towards you, and you go, oh, hell. Take out your pistol, fire once, fire twice, then you're wired, you'll go bang, and you fall over dead. So I rehearsed it again and again in my mind, the sequence of events. It was going to be action, puff of smoke, get up, oh, hell, shoot, shoot, die. Action, puff of smoke, get up. Action. I must have done it 30 times. Action, puff of smoke, get up. So the next thing I hear is, right, stand by.
Back to position, please. Attention, stand by.
And suddenly, puff of smoke. I thought, my God, has he said it and I didn't hear? So I thought, I better get up. Bang, bang. This didn't go off. And I thought, well, I better die anyway. So I went bang like that, and I fell over dead. But I'm lying on the ground thinking, what's going on here then? Suddenly I hear, action! The worst moment of my life.
With cues missed, explosions out of sync, and extras running in all the wrong directions, the chaotic scene would be a reshoot. But for the cast and crew, that was the least of their problems.
We suddenly get a panic message to get out. An Iraqi commander thought it was an Iranian invasion that were attacking this train and had trained the guns down onto us and was going to blow us to Kingdom Come.
The Iranian media next day came up with the story that our glorious army crossed the border of Iraq and attacked an ammunition train and blew it up. We're only making a film.
And copper.
With filming almost complete, on this his final shoot day, Saddam's hired Hellraiser, Oliver Reed, was back in character, playing the showman and preparing to head home. But before he left, Ollie decided to give an impromptu interview about his time in Iraq, in his own inimitable style.
And let me say this. I suppose that I'm in trouble in hotels simply because I behave like a clown. And nobody should say, why do you behave like a clown, except for the fact that actors are clowns. We are paid performers. Sometimes we are serious. And why suddenly, because we are very serious, should people think that we are bad men? And why, when we are bad men, supposed, should we not behave like clowns? I will now put my hat on, and I will wish you, because I'm going back to England, and I wish you all the best of luck.
After nearly a year of filming in the middle of the Iran-Iraq war, a wrap was finally called. The original schedule had overrun wildly, and the British cast and crew were desperate to get home.
I mean, we'd been there 9 months. We're coming to the end of the line, you know, marriages were collapsing. We just had to put our foot down and say, look, that's it, finished.
And I remember getting off at Heathrow, and I got down and kissed the bloody carpet.
The first cut of Saddam's movie was put together in Baghdad. When he was happy, the director, Mohammed, flew to London to show Latif.
Mohammed finished the cut. He was excited about what he's done. And then we ended up in the preview theater to see the first cut. The light came on, and I couldn't speak. And I just exploded. It was terrible, terrible, terrible.
With pressure mounting from Baghdad to see the finished film, Latif hired the best of British talent to recut Saddam's movie.
In the end of the day, I'm the producer. I'm the guy who carries the can. So I made sure everything is back from Baghdad, every single piece of film I ever shot. And we started again, and everything was dedicated to do it right.
After 6 months in the cutting room, the film was finished. As this opening sequence shows, it had been recut, polished, and improved, and was dispatched to Iraq. Mohammed was then summoned back to Baghdad.
Saddam Hussein said, "I congratulate you. I believe you are the man who commands the cinema, as I command Iraq."
So he liked it?
Oh, yes. And they're proud of it.
The film was paid a great compliment because he liked it very much. And one of the things that he did was to distribute gold watches with a picture of Saddam Hussein on it.
And you still got it?
Yeah.
Quite a fond heirloom for you?
Yes, memorabilia. Something that reminds me of the picture.
With Saddam's stamp of approval, he now wanted a distributor who would sell his movie around the world. But first, it needed to be showcased and was accepted to various film festivals, including the London Film Festival.
All we knew was that Saddam had financed a movie in his own country about the beginnings of Iraqi freedom from the British. It had some very good audiences, and they seemed to like it rather more than I did, really.
What's the matter?
What's the matter, Colonel? God is my witness. We'll never be able to earn an honest crust on this road.
I think the problem with the film is that the script was a bit plonky, really. It wasn't awful, didn't make you want to laugh, but the interest for me was the extraordinary business of it being made by Saddam. Once it was over at the festival, I never heard anything more, except that no distributors would entertain it.
Without a distributor, Saddam's movie was shipped back to Iraq, where it disappeared. The British cast and crew had risked their lives shooting it in a war zone. But had it been worth it?
Have you ever seen the finished film?
No, I've never seen any of it. I'd like to. Is there one? Can I see it? Yeah.
Have you ever seen the finished film?
Nope.
No, never did see it. Often wondered what had happened to it.
I've tried, I've looked everywhere, haven't found anything.
So yeah, it just disappeared into a black hole. And, you know, somewhere out there's this weird movie that one was in marginally, that it would be amazing to see.
After Saddam pulled his film back to Iraq, the powerful nation he hoped to build fell apart. Saddam's forces invaded Kuwait in 1990.
We must resist aggression, or it will destroy our freedoms.
And after 2 successive Gulf Wars and the events of 9/11, he became the West's most wanted man and was forced into hiding. In December 2003, Saddam was captured by US forces, found guilty of war crimes, and in 2006, executed.
Because of the situation in the Middle East, the film is just lost in the turmoil of war. Luckily, we have all the rushes, and we have the prints, and we have the soundtracks, and we have all the things that was necessary to make the film. And all this stuff resides in one of my garages in the county of Surrey.
The forgotten film cans of Saddam's movie have remained hidden for over 30 years. The story around them tells of a unique time in Iraq's history, and of two huge characters who went head-to-head in the heat of a war.
People simply don't believe I have been in Iraq. Oliver was easy to survive as long as you were working with him. What was not so easy to survive was playing with him.
I couldn't have enjoyed myself more. It was absolutely what I wanted to do, and I loved it. I loved an adventure of it. And the only time I was frightened was of Oliver Reed. Oliver Reed was a weapon of mass destruction.
Going to Iraq, I think, with Oliver was an extraordinary thing to be doing. And yes, I just left school, and now I know it was the beginning of something.
Me luck as you wave me goodbye.
I was the third and last love of his life. He was just a very, very sweet, lovely, quiet man. And then you had the wild character, which I also loved.
Saddam Hussein was the facilitator of a project that would have produced a respectable Iraqi film industry, because he was a top guy. He was the guy who says, "Thou shalt do," and everybody said, "Yes, sir." Those rusty cans remind me of an Iraq that a lot of us had hoped would be, but it didn't.